I really appreciate you joining. My name is Erin, and I'm going to be giving the seminar today, the 4 scientifically proven tricks that dietitians use to eliminate tummy troubles. Oh, sorry about that. In this seminar, I'm going to teach you exactly how to implement these tricks so that you can reduce all of these symptoms that you know so well: bloating, reflux, abdominal pain, all of this within 80% within 3 weeks. So that's our goal, and that's what I'm going to teach you about today. I want to make sure you get the information that you need today. So just make sure to shut down any distractions that you can. Things like if you can put your phone on airplane mode, turn off the TV. That'll help you to focus in and get all this incredible information. Also, make sure you stick around until the end. I'm going to throw in a free bonus to everybody that's here live with me today. It's only available live on the seminar, so make sure you stick around to the end to get that, okay?
Erin, sorry,
Yes.
it's Caroline.
Yes.
Can you share your desktop there because we can't see your
Oh,
slides?
I'm so sorry. Oh, yes, I totally can. Thanks for telling me, Carolyn.
Just at the bottom, if you do the share and share desktop.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. How is that? Does that look
Yeah,
better?
we can see them if you want to do full screen.
Perfect. Thanks for letting me know, Carolyn.
Okay.
Okay,
Now,
so
perfect.
there was that picture of that free bonus. So basically, at the end, I'll offer this to you, how to get it, and it's basically just a quick way to get better results. I'll explain it more at the end, but stick around to get that. All right, so in that chat box that you have that you can pick on and open, go ahead and type yes or no for me. Can you tell me, first of all, are you frustrated that nothing seems to fix your digestive problems? Not even visiting your doctor or trying special diets or taking dietary supplements. Has that been a frustration for you? And then next, can you tell me if food has actually become a really confusing and scary world where you're never sure what to eat? Can you type yes or no to that for me? And then finally, do you feel like your digestive problems actually have a major impact on your relationships, on your career, and on your enjoyment of life? If that's true, can you type yes or no for me? And I'm definitely seeing your yes replies there. And I just want to let you know that I'm sorry that you're going through this, but I'm also glad you're here because you're exactly the type of person that can benefit from this approach. So basically, here's how you can know that you're in the right place today. If you feel like you've tried all the digestive health advice and it's actually, instead of it's helping, it's actually made you more confused than ever, and you want something that's simple, that's healthy, and that's sustainable, and that actually gets you results, that's what we're here to talk about. So not something that just, doesn't actually help you. You're also in the right place if you feel overwhelmed by all of this and you feel like there's not enough time to sort through all of this information that you see online and actually figure out what to do. And there's definitely not time to actually do it. It seems so time consuming. If that's true for you, you're in the right place. And finally, you're in the right place if you feel anxious and scared of this. If you feel like it's ruining your life and you don't know where to turn next, you're tired of the embarrassment and the inconvenience and the pain of it, and you're actually kind of starting to lose faith that you can find a solution, definitely stick with me if that applies to you, okay? You might be wondering who I am to be sharing all this information with you today, but long story short, I'm a registered dietitian. I'm registered in the United States and the United Kingdom, where I lived for several years. I have an additional board certification in integrative and functional medical nutrition therapy, and I have a private practice, Real Nutrition RX. My approach isn't actually conventional, or else I'd probably be in a clinic somewhere giving you a little cheesy handout. I actually practice something called functional medicine, which addresses the root cause of your symptoms. And it's really catching on. I've been featured in a lot of magazines. I've published my book. I've been on a variety of webinars. So there's a lot of people that are kind of fed up with this kind of one-size-fits-all quickie solution of you get a medication and go on your way. And if that's you, stick with me because I'm going to show you a different way. You might be wondering, why am I sharing these secrets of how I solve IBS for people? Well, basically, long story short, I focused on digestive health since the beginning of my practice and my time as a dietitian. and I got really good at it, and it felt really good to be helping people for a while. But then I started to notice something, and that was that this approach that I use is so effective, but most people with IBS don't have access to it. They go to their doctor and the doctor doesn't tell them about it, or they tell them to find a dietitian who does it, but there's none in the area, or the one in the area is like prohibitively expensive. And that started to really frustrate me. And so I started to kind of look for a fresh way to get this out to people, basically. What really turned the page for me is I had this client in the UK. Her name was Beryl, and she was a grandma. She had 7 grandkids. And she was really sweet, but she wasn't very savvy. Like most of my clients come to me knowing a lot about nutrition and diets already, but she didn't. She was just kind of holed up in her house with really severe IBS. Her family had to take care of her, do her laundry. I mean, she was very embarrassed by it. And, you know, most people I think wouldn't have taught this approach to Beryl because it's kind of considered to be like a little bit complex. But fortunately, at this point, I had developed a system with a lot of resources and like to make it really plug and play. So I gave it to her, hoping that it would work. And sure enough, after a few months, I ran into Beryl in Sainsbury, a grocery store there in England, and she was doing great. And she said it had changed her life and that she had been able to do it. So that was exciting. And also it kind of gave me this epiphany. Like I was up at night thinking, dang, you know, if Beryl can do this like elderly grandma, you know, that doesn't even know how to use a computer, then it doesn't need to be so like walled off from people that you have to go see a dietitian privately to make it happen. Because a lot of people can't do that. So it kind of started to get me thinking about ways to get this idea out. And I really just became obsessed from there with finding a way to get it out to people and to help them change their lives. So that's my story. But I want you to go ahead and imagine what it would be like to experience the results of this approach. Basically, what people have happen is they get freedom from pain and bloating and reflux and their gas, which is by itself incredible. But then they also have normal bowel movements. They have certainty around what food to eat and not eat. They're able to eat out at restaurants and parties with confidence. Their energy is better, their mental clarity is better, and their mood. And finally, they don't have those horrible impacts of their digestive symptoms on their life and on their relationships and on their career and their finances. It's very freeing. And so go ahead and imagine what that would be like, because that's what I've seen hundreds of times over for people, and that's what I want for you. So here's what you'll learn today in brief. We're going to talk about irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, because that's kind of the symptoms. That's basically what describes the symptoms that we've been talking about. We'll talk about how to improve on it quickly, how to enjoy your diet, how to get the best possible results with it, and why your individuality is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. And it's actually a way to maximize your results. And so starting with IBS. So whether you're diagnosed or not isn't really what matters here, but we do want to be on the same page with what that actually means when I say IBS, okay? It's the symptoms we've been talking about the whole time. So what determines whether somebody has IBS or not? If they have these symptoms, I'll get into that in a second, but if you have these symptoms, you'll benefit from this approach, basically. There's a few subtypes. C, constipation, D, diarrhea, M, mixed, and unclassified. You might have heard of those. And like the really critical thing to know is that IBS is a diagnosis of exclusion. So what that means is that with a rare and kind of like new exception, you're never going to test positive for IBS the way you would for other conditions. What happens with IBS is they basically say, okay, you have digestive problems. We've ruled out everything else we can think of, like cancer, celiac disease, colitis, Crohn's. You don't have any of those, so we're just going to call it IBS. And the really important thing to understand about that is that it doesn't actually say what's happening, like what's causing it. There can be multiple root causes for IBS, and they'll all be called IBS, even though they all have different things going on. So that's really critical to understand. But basically, if your doctor's getting diagnosis, they'll rule out other things, and then they'll say, okay, do you meet this Rome criteria? You've had this problem for 6 months, and for the last 3 months, it's been at least 1 day per week. Well, maybe you've only had it for 5 months, so you haven't met the cutoff yet, but you still can benefit from this approach. So basically, my point is, You might be fortunate enough to have medical insurance that will let you go through this whole process and get the label of IBS, and you might not, but either way, your symptoms are real and you deserve a solution. So I wouldn't get too caught up around that, but that's basically what it is when we say IBS. Another critical thing to know is around 1 in 5 adults actually have IBS, but not all are diagnosed. It's only around 5%. So if you're thinking, man, I really feel like I have these symptoms and I have IBS, but my doctor hasn't told me that, well, you might be one of those 15% of the population that has it that's not diagnosed with it because of the whole bureaucracy around getting that diagnosis. So the point is, stick with me whether you have the diagnosis or not if you feel like you have those symptoms, and I'll tell you basically what to do about it. I know it's really a nightmare to deal with these symptoms, whether you technically have IBS or not, and you might not have heard that before in your doctor's office, because I feel like it's kind of dismissed sometimes, like, oh, congrats, you just have IBS, not cancer. But it's like, okay, it is great to not have cancer, but it's still life-changing to have IBS. So I'm here to acknowledge that and also tell you there's totally hope. I've turned it around for hundreds of people. I know what works, and I'll share that with you now. We'll get into it. So the first of the 4 tricks that I'm going to talk about, and if you have your workbook, this is a fill-in on your workbook, is to use approaches that are scientifically proven to be effective. So evidence-based approaches are the way to go. As an example, I'll tell you about my client, Beth. She came to me with really bad diarrhea type IBS, very malnourished and very underweight. She was restricting a lot of things from her diet that I've listed here, and she had kind of pieced these from around the internet. Like, I've learned from one blog article to not eat fiber, and I learned from another friend to not eat gluten, and she had kind of like picked up all these things and started restricting them from her diet. She was down to basically like 3 or 4 things she would eat, like toast, chicken breasts, gluten-free muffins, and like it had gone on like that for years, basically. And now the reason why she came to me is she started having new problems like anxiety, frequent illness, insomnia, and tooth decay. So she said, what should I do about this? And I said, Beth, you're malnourished, your nutrition status is poor, and that's why you're developing all these new problems. So I put her on this system that I'm going to teach you. She was able to bring back a ton of different foods into her diet, still had remission from her IBS, but also gained that weight back and improved her nutrition status. So the point here is that what she was doing before wasn't science-based. It was just taking out a bunch of food from her diet. But we got her on the science-based system, and it works. And she was able to improve in every way. And that system that I'm talking about is called the low FODMAP diet, but it's really a protocol. And a really critical thing to understand here is that even if you've tried the low FODMAP diet, I want you to stick with me, because I've seen a lot of people think that they've tried it or that they're doing it, and they're not doing it right. So if you've tried it and it hasn't worked, stick with me, because I'll get more into that during the talk, okay? But just really quickly, I'll give you some evidence around this. There's over 20 clinical trials of the low FODMAP diet, and I won't bore you with every single one, but I'll give you just a few quick highlights. One is that there's been quite a few studies like this where they basically put some people with IBS on the low FODMAP diet, and generally within 3 to 4 weeks, they'll see around 70 to 80% of them in remission. That means like don't have IBS on the diet, don't meet the criteria. And in my practice, I see better than that. My system is very like built up and helpful. So I'll see closer to 90% of people see remission within weeks, basically. Another group of studies on this was basically they took one group with IBS and gave them the low FODMAP diet, and then they took another group with IBS and gave them the traditional IBS advice, like don't drink caffeine, don't eat gassy foods like broccoli, don't eat large meals and fat. And then sure enough, the low FODMAP diet far outperformed the traditional advice. So if you're going into the clinic and you're hearing like, oh, just don't eat a high-fat diet, well, chances are the low FODMAP diet is going to do more for you than that advice would, and that's what they find in the research. This was kind of a big statement back in 2017. This is one of the premier journals for gastroenterologists. They officially came out and said, okay, yeah, there's convincing evidence for the low FODMAP diet. It might not sound like a big statement, but they're very conservative, and they've never said that about any diet for IBS before. So it's actually kind of a big deal. When I totally summarize all the research, basically it averages out to 70 to 80% getting full remission on the low FODMAP diet. And then I find that even that other like 20 to 30%, or in my case, 10% of people that don't get remission, they still get huge improvement. So virtually everybody gets improvement from this. And there's no medication on the market that has those kind of statistics. So there's no pill that you can take, which I'm sure you know, or you wouldn't be here, that takes care of this the way the low FODMAP diet does. And they always use a dietitian to do it. Dietitians are trained to do this. And that's critical to know, because I've seen a lot of bad low FODMAP advice coming out from people who aren't dietitians. Some people can be great with it, but just kind of like a note of caution they put in the studies. So you might be wondering, what is a FODMAP? Why does she keep saying that weird word? And you might have heard of it and you might not have. But basically, if you haven't, FODMAP is an acronym. And what they're talking about with FODMAPs is these certain types of carbohydrates. Now, it's not a low carbohydrate diet, but they're talking about certain types of carbohydrates, fibers, and sugars that aren't broken down and absorbed well in your gut. And basically what that causes are the symptoms of IBS, right? Abdominal pain, cramping, diarrhea, constipation, gas, bloating. That's what comes from that. Specifically, what that acronym stands for is fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And you might be thinking, oh, okay, I'm done. I don't eat polyols, so I'm good. Well, why don't you let me put it another way? So here's a few high FODMAP foods, not all of them, but if you look at this list, consider if you're eating any of these. Basically, they're everywhere, is my point with this slide. If you're not expressly avoiding FODMAPs, you're eating FODMAPs. They're in basically everything. And so if you have that workbook or a piece of paper, go ahead and write down a couple foods that you saw on this list that you eat. If you're eating, a few of these foods on a regular basis, then you're not on a low FODMAP diet, and you definitely stand to benefit from this approach, basically. So how does it happen that these FODMAPs cause a problem? Well, you can kind of think of like food molecules are like the lock, and your enzymes that your body produces are like the key that opens that lock. With FODMAPs, your body doesn't have the key. It doesn't have the enzyme to open that molecule. And so it goes down into your gut undigested, and basically two things happen from that. One, water gets pulled into your gut by those molecules, and two, bacteria in your gut, they definitely can digest and eat those. So they eat those FODMAPs up like fast food, and they produce gas as their waste product. And it can be a problem for the normal bacteria that are in your colon, but some people have SIBO, which is small intestine, bacteria in their small intestine, and that makes this problem even worse. That's the case in about 70% of people who have IBS. So in either case, you're getting water and gas filling your GI tract, and it causes the symptoms of IBS, basically. So what do? You go through the low FODMAP protocol, and it allows you to eliminate your symptoms while also finding your broadest possible diet. So, life's not worth living if all you can eat is like a low FODMAP muffin, right? You want to be able to have a broad diet that also prevents future nutrition deficiencies and new medical problems, right? So that's what the low FODMAP protocol does. So you might be thinking, it's pretty good. Let's get that water and gas out of my gut. How do I do this? Well, here's how it works. A few broad concepts here. First of all, it's a learning protocol that gets you to a personalized diet. So basically what that means is it's not just a chintzy handout where you get like this one page of like eat this and not that. You've probably tried things like that and it didn't work, because in the end, people with IBS have different underlying causes, and different diets end up working in the end for different people. But the low FODMAP protocol gets you to what works for you through a system. It's an elimination diet, and what that means is that, there's a phase where you take foods out, and that's where people usually make the mistake of stopping. But just as important, there's the phase of bringing foods back in a systematic way. And then again, that's what the protocol teaches you how to do without it making it too complicated. And then another big concept is that nothing is completely off limits, which is nice. It's not like you have to get like only gluten-free, completely 100% gluten-free foods all the time. It's more about your gut. Think of it like a bucket. And as long as you don't overflow your bucket, you don't have symptoms. And that's really why sometimes, like with IBS, you'll notice that like one day I eat one food and I'm fine. The next day I eat that food and I have an issue. Why is that? Well, it's because of the other FODMAPs that you had on one day and not the other day. One day you filled your bucket and the other day you didn't. So basically what the low FODMAP protocol does is it teaches you how to work through the process to learn what fills your bucket and what doesn't. So that's really the trick. You go through the process, you know how to avoid overflowing your bucket, and you can go through life eating basically all foods as long as you don't fill your bucket too much. So basically it takes a system to do that. And as I've made it simple, I'll teach you how to do it in a simple way so that it's not overwhelming. Your end goal is getting to an individualized diet that minimizes your symptoms with the least possible restrictions. Okay. You might be thinking, what is this weird food? Is it some kind of crazy like shake that I have to live off of or something? Here's some low FODMAP meals that I've made recently for my family and they loved it. It's things like salmon, pancakes with bacon, cookies, Thai food, cottage pie. So it's not weird food. It's just understanding these little tricks of getting the FODMAPs low in them so that it doesn't trigger your symptoms. Just a quick note, if you've tried low FODMAP and you didn't have luck with it, I would just say there's a lot of incomplete information out there on it. So unless you're totally certain that you've done it correctly, stick with me because I'll teach you the correct way to do it. Just as a couple examples, I went off on Pinterest. This is one of my little things I like to do. But I go on Pinterest and I get these IBS infographics because they crack me up. Like this one has like 8 IBS triggers on it. Well, if you cut all these out completely, 1, life would be really difficult. And 2, you'd probably still have IBS symptoms because there's a lot of things that are high FODMAP that aren't on here. So, sometimes trying things online like aren't really going to fix the problem. When you think about FODMAP specifically, I got this one off Pinterest. This is like the green foods, like of what to eat on a low FODMAP diet. I won't get into too many specifics here, but first of all, like what about the other 90% of foods in the world? Like what do you do about those? And then secondly, there's some things on here that are just wrong. So if you tried low FODMAP based on something like this, I encourage you to try again in the right way so that you can know if it actually works, because making tiny mistakes can basically ruin the whole thing. So, okay, I've been talking long enough. It's your turn to take action on your worksheet or a piece of paper. Just jot down real quick any like diet advice that you're currently following that you got online, like maybe from Pinterest or Instagram or a blog. It's not necessarily wrong. They're not always wrong, but it's good to know where your information is coming from because we're talking about science-based approaches. Also, write down any anecdotal advice you've gotten from people like friends and family members, from Facebook. Again, it can work, but when you start piecing together multiple pieces of advice from different people, you can end up like Beth, where you're overly restricted and still not getting the full benefit. So it's just good to know where your stuff is coming from. I've actually seen some dangerous advice on free Facebook communities. So it's just important to know what advice you're following. And then just make a note, if you haven't already done it, commit to giving yourself what you deserve, and that's to get on a complete system that actually fixes this for you, gets rid of it, and lets you live your life to the fullest. You deserve that, and I'll teach you how to actually do that in here in a second. But basically, what you should expect on that complete system is to get 80% improvement within 3 weeks. Here's some places where you can find it. The traditional way, again, is you ask your doctor for a referral, and he happens to know a registered dietitian that's trained in this, because not all of us are, and they live in your area and your insurance covers it or you can afford it. That's great. But why I'm here is I find that usually doesn't work for people for one number of reasons. I've listed a couple of dietitians on here that I trust, Patsy and Kate. They've got some good information on their websites that you can look at. There's an app from Monash University. They're the ones that pioneered the low FODMAP protocol. Their app is not free, but it's not expensive. You can get kind of a quick start guide on there. or wait till the end, because I'm going to tell you what I think is the best way at the end. But here's some resources. Now, don't feel like you need to copy this down, because I'm going to email out the replay at the end. So just stay tuned for that later. So don't feel like you need to copy these. Okay. All right, let's move on to the second trick, and that's to focus on eating more food and not less. And before you get mad at me, I'm not saying that you should just be able to go out and tolerate every type of food. What I'm saying is to get on a system to help you learn what foods you can tolerate and what foods you can't. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. I had this client named Jerry, and he came to me not for IBS, but for psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disease. He did have a history of IBS type C for a long time, and he was very fatigued. When I assessed Jerry, I find that he had a very compromised immune system because of multiple nutrient deficiencies. And the reason why he had those nutrient deficiencies is that he went on the low FODMAP, like basically the elimination phase, where you take most of the FODMAPs out of your diet. And that's meant to be for like 2 to 6 weeks that you do that. But Jerry had stayed there for years, okay? And so he was overly restricted for years. That caused the nutrient deficiencies that caused his immune system to convert into an autoimmune disease, basically. So what we did with Jerry is we took him through this FODMAP reintroduction process of bringing more foods in, and he found out that he was mostly just sensitive to fructans, which is like one type of FODMAP. He brought back a ton of other foods successfully. His IBS stayed in remission, and actually his nutrition status improved, his immune function improved, and his psoriasis improved. So it's about a process of being able to bring more foods in if you've been restricted for a long period of time. So just a note of caution, it's not good to stay overly restricted for a long period. But again, you need the support and the guidance that helps you to move past that. It's easier said than done, right? So your turn to take action. Again, on your notes there, your workbook, write down any foods you're avoiding that you can think of off the top of your head. If your list has more than a few things on it, start to think about your nutrition status, because even people who don't have restrictive diets in the modern world, there's a very high rate of nutrient insufficiencies just because of our processed diet that we tend to eat. So think about your nutrition status is very important, so because you don't want to develop new problems, obviously. One small step you can do is to get on a really quality multivitamin with minerals. If you get one of the like kind of name like family name brand products from like Target or Walmart or something, it's going to have some things that could trigger your IBS in it, like fillers and probiotics or prebiotics or fibers or gluten. So get on a quality product. You can reach out to me if you need help with some ideas, but that's a really good step you can take. And then think about your diet. If you know about low FODMAP, do you already know what types you're sensitive to or not? Because that's a really important part of the protocol. If not, I'm going to teach you how to figure that out. You want to do this basically in a systematic way, so like a scientific experiment, so that you know what's working and what's not. So here's the protocol that I use with my clients. I basically say, okay, you've been on the elimination phase of low FODMAP for a few weeks. You're feeling really good. Now we're going to try these 6 different types of FODMAPs, and I'll tell you what they are in a second. We'll do 1 week each, where you have like a quarter of a serving the first day, or even you could be more conservative and start with an 1/8, and then each day you double it until you're having 2 servings per day, or until your symptoms get worse. If your symptoms gets worse, you record that you don't tolerate that kind. Or if your symptoms don't get worse, then you say, okay, I do tolerate that kind. And then you have a 3-day washout basically between each type of FODMAP. Here's the specific foods. And you guys, again, you'll get the replay so that you don't have to write these down. But usually I charge a consult to teach this to people, but I'm just giving it to you. These are the foods that I use for each FODMAP type. So for example, if you're reintroducing fructans, you'll cook something with onion. You'll eat a quarter serving the first day, double it until you eat 2 servings a day, have a 3-day washout, and then you know if you tolerate fructans or not. You'll definitely know. Same with garlic, and then you'll move on to the next one, okay? So that's how I recommend doing it. And then moving on to our third trick. So if you're writing down your workbook, it's to prepare before jumping in. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I've just seen this mess people up so many times. They're like really excited about low FODMAP, In fact, they're so excited that they're like, I'm starting today, and they start right away without really enough planning. And the planning phase is really critical, you guys. Here's some things that I've seen happen or heard about happening. Obviously, my clients, I don't encourage them to start unprepared, but basically, I knew one girl that started right before she was a bridesmaid at their sister's wedding. She ended up staying up all night drinking, and that threw the whole thing off, and she got really discouraged. I had another one who, this actually was one of my clients. He didn't tell me he had this huge work deadline looming. I think he thought it wouldn't be a big deal, but he was stressed out, staying late at work, ended up eating things that weren't on part of the protocol. And then that kind of messed the whole thing up, and he had to start over. Somebody, again, didn't know this was going to happen, but went on a long overseas trip. Foods aren't in English. There's not, limited access to certain foods. That kind of messed it up. And then finally, I had one where she didn't have anything really complicated going on, but every night her husband would bring her like a cocktail and a little bowl of ice cream for them to share. And that threw the whole thing off. So there's like basically some preparation you can do with planning the timing of this that'll help you be successful. And that's really important to keep in mind. So resist the temptation to jump right in. I know it's exciting, but planning is key. So here's a couple of tips on that. Avoid, right before Christmas isn't good, obviously, that's past now, but in other holidays, work deadlines, stressful times are not the best time. You really want a 2-week, pretty quiet period to start, get your feet under you, and then really 5 to 7 weeks after that are relatively quiet as you try to start reintroducing FODMAPs and experimenting with what you can add back. You definitely want to make sure your support network's in place. So like getting your spouse and your family members on board. With that client with a husband, she said, yeah, I hadn't really explained to him what I was doing. And once I explained it and he understood, he was happy to support me. So it's just talking and keeping that communication open. Tell people what you need. Is it childcare? Is it help with, driving the kids to and from sports? Just ask people to support you during this like relatively short period of time so that you can, change your life basically. Finally, if you feel like you want a professional to work with, I'll give you a few resources for where you can find somebody. If you take one of those systems I gave you earlier, I recommend doing this, or like the one I'll tell you at the end that's mine. You don't need to have an additional professional if you don't want to. But basically, I would avoid just working with somebody who like also has IBS, who like has tried it before, because you might need some more professional oversight than that. And here's some resources that you can start with. Here's some places in the United States. And again, you'll get these slides later. But you can use these databases in the US to find a FODMAP trained dietitian to help you. And then in the UK, I live there. There's not as much available, but here's a few websites where you can start looking. And again, you can ask your doctor if they know anyone as well. Okay, this is a really critical step. Write this down in your stuff. I deserve support and a chance to succeed at healing. You really do. And so prepare and plan for this to be life-changing, because if you do that, then it will be life-changing. But sometimes I think we just put other people first and we put ourselves last, and doing that can make us do things kind of half-heartedly, and then it doesn't work and we never end up with those life-changing results. So you deserve it. Go ahead and jump in and do it the right way. All right, moving on to our last trick that I'll share with you. It's to ditch that strict diet template and customize for you as a unique individual. What I'm talking about here is when you get that handout from like your doctor, or maybe a dietitian gave you one, or you get one from like Pinterest or something, and it's like really strict, and it's like one size fits all. This is what everybody with IBS should do. Well, we've already said that's not really what works. You're unique, and you need something that's unique. So here's a few examples of like what I'm talking about. I've been on Pinterest again. These are IBS diet guides. And like, first of all, there's almost no foods on here. You can't just live off of like 10 different foods forever. And second of all, there's no plan. Like, how long do you do this? When do you stop? Where do you go from here? On the bottom right, why is chocolate so important and it's the only important thing? It's all very confusing and incomplete. And it's not individualized for you. Like, you deserve something that's specific for you, that makes sense in the real world with life, or else it's not gonna really last. So basically what happens with with these strict templates, is that they cause a lot of confusion and unnecessary restriction, right? So that's not really what you need. Here's why one size doesn't fit all. Like we said, there can be multiple underlying causes with IBS. So somebody has SIBO or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth versus like visceral hypersensitivity or leaky gut. Different underlying problems will lead to different versions of the low FODMAP protocol that you like arrive at, basically. So with that in mind, I'd like you to go ahead and take action again. And this is just kind of like a mindset shift. We got to forget about finding the perfect like one-page diet prescription. I actually got trolled on Facebook a few weeks ago by some lady that said, why don't you just tell me what works? Why don't you just give me a blog post that tells me exactly what to eat forever, that fixes my IBS? Like, why are you withholding this from me? Well, if it was that simple, it would already be out there. It is simple to follow the protocol, but you've got to go through the protocol and find your unique best fit, basically, or else it just doesn't work in the real world. So you get on the system, and in the end, you maximize your symptom improvement while minimizing restrictions and discomfort. That's the low FODMAP protocol. So just that mindset shift is what I'd like you to kind of think about and commit to getting started with. How do you actually personalize the low FODMAP protocol for you? Very few people actually even teach this, but basically what you do is you go through that protocol I taught you of how to reintroduce FODMAPs. And then once you know what FODMAP types you're sensitive to, you use a reference list, like you could use that Monash app to see what foods have that FODMAP type. Like with that example I gave you with Jerry, he was sensitive to fructans. So he really only needs to avoid foods that have fructans, not other types of FODMAPs. So basically, you're using your list to work out your own personalized version of what you need to avoid or include, right? That's the personalized approach that you need to take. So remember, you're a unique individual, and you know yourself the best, even better than your doctor, your primary care provider. You know yourself better than anybody else. And your body has the innate ability to heal given the right conditions. So you don't need to just be put on a medication forever, especially a medication that doesn't help, okay? The critical first step in healing is finding a system that helps you win at this and turn it around in a loving and supportive environment. So with that, I'd love to hear what you think about this. Do you see how powerful a low FODMAP protocol can be for reversing your IBS? It eliminates your symptoms and it changes lives. If you would love to have freedom from your digestive problems and have more time for the things you love doing, wouldn't that be amazing? So I'm not sure completely why you attended today, but you're probably fed up with being in pain and dealing with the embarrassment of this. You're probably not sure where to turn from here. You've tried a lot of things and it hasn't fixed it. You're probably worried about the long-term effects of this on your relationships, your career, and your health. You probably are very busy and you're tired of trying to find an answer. You don't feel like you have time to keep sorting through stuff and trying new things that don't work. And finally, you probably feel like it would be great to just have a detailed, easy to follow path that fixes it, that makes you feel included and that includes support. That probably sounds like it would be pretty amazing. And honestly, I agree. I have encouragement for you. It's time that you achieved full control of your digestion, of your health, and of your life. All it takes is a good system with the right information and strong support. So I'm just saying, it's your time. You came here, you put the time into coming today, you took the notes. This approach can change your life, but you need to know what to do in order to implement it properly. And that's where I come in. I'm going to share with you, like I said, what's the best way to do this. But first, I want you to remember, nothing that I've shown you today is theory. I've repeated these results of remission in hundreds of IBS patients before. People who've gone from doctor to doctor and tried diet after diet, I still get results for them because I know what works and I've refined my system to be incredibly effective. So basically, you probably want to skip all that confusion and have someone tell you how to fix it. Stay tuned. Basically, The clients that I've helped have not been extra special. They haven't had exclusive access to any special resources or tools. They're just normal people with IBS who follow the system that works that I've developed for them. So if they can do it, think about Beryl. If she can do it, you can do it too. So basically, if you want to know how to achieve radical IBS improvement by implementing this protocol correctly, you have two ways you can go. You can continue the guesswork. So let's say you bought a book or something for the low FODMAP diet. Invariably, questions come up. There's things that aren't addressed in the book. The book is time consuming and confusing to read in most cases. A lot of them have negative reviews for being like high on sugar or for giving incomplete information. You can keep going through that conflicted and confusing world, or you can go the simple and effective route of just getting the A to Z answer what to do. And obviously, you probably know which way I suggest you want to go. If you want to do the simple and effective route, I'd love to invite you to join me in Recovery from IBS. And basically, it's an A to Z blueprint for cutting your digestive problems by at least 80% within 3 weeks using the low FODMAP protocol and yielding life-changing results. The whole course is available completely online to do at your convenience, available now for you to access. And let me tell you a story about Melissa, one of my clients who went through the course. She's a super busy working mom with 2 young kids, so every minute is spoken for. She has a 15-year history of IBS, and basically she was able to go through the course no problem. She achieved IBS remission within 2 weeks of 80% and then complete remission within 2 months on the course. Her fatigue was better, her mood was better, and when I asked her for her story, she said, "Erin, you changed my life." And she was able to do it all in the real world, going to work, going to parties, taking care of her kids, because that's what I've been doing for years. I've been refining this for real people in the real world, okay? So here's what you get with the course. You get the complete protocol for the low FODMAP approach and beyond. It takes out the confusion, the guesswork, and the overwhelm of doing this. You get complete access to the virtual course, and you'll get access to the lifetime of the course, which will be at least 5 years. All of the updates that I include, all of the new bonuses that I include, you'll get access to all of those. You'll get online support from me and my team, plus an online support community. That's critical, you guys, because I can't tell you how many people I've had come into my practice. They heard about low FODMAP. They tried to do it on their own using a book or website, and they just had so many questions and confusion, and they weren't getting the results that they expected. And I found immediately like tweaks that they needed to make to get the results that they wanted. So that's really critical that you've got me there to support you and help you through it. I've included 3 full weeks of meal plans because I know that's how real life is. You just need to know what food to buy, give me the recipes, tell me what to eat, and then you don't have to go through the work of figuring all that out. So that'll get you quick results. I've also got a ton of handouts and templates for tracking your symptoms, recording your food, reintroducing FODMAP so that you don't have to think about this or put work into like how to apply all of it basically. I've also, again, made it for real life by including a bunch of cheat sheets for things like how to eat out at restaurants, parties, what to have for snacks, how to have lunches for your work week that are like no cook, quick, easy lunches, how to switch out your pantry. Like if you got to get rid of this food for now, here's a food you can use instead. What are some quick substitutes? Tons of helpful cheat sheets like that to make it plug and play for you. Real quick, I'll go into a few things of what each module includes. So basically there's 5 modules. The first one, I lay the foundations for you. You just watch these videos. It won't take you too long. We talk more about IBS. We talk about how to interface with your healthcare provider while you're doing the program. I talk about the impact of the low FODMAP diet on the microbiome, which, long story short, if you do it correctly, it doesn't hurt your microbiome, but if you do it incorrectly, it can. And then how it stacks up against medications. I've already told you that. There's no medication on the market that does what the low FODMAP diet does. And then I tell you exactly what the low FODMAP protocol is and how it works so that you totally fully understand the big picture of what you're doing. In Module 2, I prepare you for success, like we talked about in that third trick. I tell you exactly how to set up your support network. I tell you 4 different ways to get meal plans to make this easy. And I give you the pros and cons of each and how to get started so that you can always be there with a low FODMAP meal plan so that you don't have to figure it out on your own. And then really critical, I teach you about other lifestyle pillars that are hugely helpful with IBS. Things like how to improve your stress relief, how to get more sleep, and how to optimize your exercise for improvement. So those are really critical things that they go into as well. Again, remember I've included 3 one-week meal plans in the course. And I also teach you 3 other ways to get meal plans so that you're never left without a plan of what to eat and when and how exactly to do it. And you don't have to figure it out on your own. In Module 3, we actually start the diet. We start getting that rapid improvement, that 80% within a few weeks. I tell you exactly what to do. I have all those resources I described. You've got my time-tested resources that have been working for real people in real life, or things like travel and going to parties. You're not going to be like stuck in your house like a recluse, not able to go out and socialize. From day 1, you can do that. I also, again, remember you've got those work week lunches. It's literally like buy this shopping list for the week, make these quick lunches, and then you're ready to go. Finally, I give you a last minute checklist for what to make sure you have in place before you start so that you can make sure that you're successful. Here's what you can expect when you start the diet. Way less bloating, almost no bloating. Goodbye to abdominal pain and cramping. Way less gas and reflux, if any. More normal elimination patterns, especially if you tend towards the diarrhea type. And I include special tips in there if you're constipation type as well or mixed. You'll definitely have more energy and a better mood. So here's one great thing about this, you guys, is it actually doesn't feel like a lot of work to people. It usually feels like life gets easier because you're using the meal plans, you're cooking what it says to eat, and you feel great. And so there's less thinking about food and better energy and less IBS symptoms. So people really feel good on it. And then in Module 4, we start to do what we talked about in that trick where I told you about eating a broader diet. I walk you exactly through the reintroduction protocol. I give you a bunch of resources to help you be really successful with that. And then I tell you, you won't get this from anybody. I tell you exactly what to do beyond reintroductions, because really you go into this whole world of like, well, now what do I do for the next months or years of this? I want to still feel great, but how do I keep individualizing it for me? So I teach you how to do that in Module 4. Here's what you can expect in Module 4. You're basically going to maintain your IBS improvement and maybe even improve further, but you're also going to be eating more food variety and have more confidence around what foods to eat and how much in order to like not overfill your bucket like we talked about. And then in the final module, we go beyond FODMAPs into the world of integrative and functional medicine. So in the first lesson, I teach you more about those IBS root causes that we talked about, like SIBO and intestinal permeability, and how you can actually address those root causes. Because, hey, what's better than being on a great diet is not being on a diet, right? So if you can address your root cause, that's the best. And then in lesson 2, I get into dietary supplements. I'm not against them. I'm for them, but you do have to be very careful. So I teach you all the ins and outs of dietary supplements. And then finally, if you're thinking you want to work with a healthcare professional to address your root causes and get further improvement and work on your gut even more, I teach you like basically what to look for in somebody, some places of where to find these people so that you can start to even further get more improvement. Okay, and then don't forget, we have a Facebook community for the group. It's the Recovery from IBS Facebook group. And the course fee includes access to our Facebook group where I'm on there daily to support you. And there's a community of other people going through the same thing. So, are you ready to use this approach to eliminate your IBS symptoms and change your life? If you are, you might be thinking, okay, Erin, what's the investment for this? Well, I added up the total value of the course, and it's worth around $1,500 or 1,200 pounds. But what I've done is I've packaged it all into this course for you. Again, remember my vision and my mission is to improve access of this to people so that they can actually afford it. Who can spend that much money on it? Well, You can get it from me, get the course for just $289 or 229 pounds. And it's an even better value if you join right now on the seminar, because you're going to get this fast action bonus that I'll describe to you in a second. So if you're ready to go, head over to the website. It's recoveryfromibs.com/course, and you can get started. Here's what that fast action bonus is all about. It basically is a little template that makes it so that you're never without a low FODMAP meal that's like quick and easy and on the go. It's MYOS, make your own smoothies. So you basically, it has like, you pick a liquid, you pick a protein, a fruit and vegetable, a fat, and it tells you exactly how much of what you can put. And so it's like choose your own adventure. You use that template to make up a quick little smoothie. You know it's compliant with the program. Say you're late for work, late for your kid's soccer practice, whatever. You just blitz that thing together, take it in the car, and then you're never left hungry while you're doing it. Okay, so if you go over to the website, recoveryfromibs.com/course, you're going to see this page. This is what it looks like when you go there. And what you want you to do, if you're ready to go, is go ahead and scroll down to those turquoise buttons. Either you find the one that says click here to get instant access, or there's that floating one at the bottom that says sign me up. Click on one of those two buttons, and then you'll get to this checkout page. Just fill that checkout page out, submit it, and then within a few minutes, you're going to get immediate access to the course. It's available right now for you to just jump in and start. And you'll also get links to request access to the Facebook community. And then you'll start to get a series of encouraging emails from me with tips for getting started. So one last thing I want to talk with you about is, I feel like people who have IBS have tried a lot of things, and it's kind of scary. You feel like it's a little bit discouraging if you keep trying things and it doesn't work. So I'm so confident in this. What I've decided to do is I've never seen anybody have a 6-week guarantee before, but it's a 6-week money back guarantee. It's risk-free. Bottom line, if it doesn't work for you, let me know. And as long as you can show me that you did it, so meaning you got like your food diary and your symptom diary, you're going to get a full refund from me. There might be like a credit card fee that got taken out or something, but basically I'm going to give you all your money back. If you come to me within 6 weeks and you tried it and it didn't work for you, money back, no problem. Okay. I'm not even afraid to do that because I know it works. So here's where I broke down the total value of the course. I basically went online and found a bunch of low FODMAP packages from dietitians. They averaged out to $755 just to work with a dietitian. And then you add the meal plans, the cheat sheets, the bonuses that I've included, and it comes out to an 80% savings to join the course, and that's without the quick action bonus. So it's even more than 80% off with the quick action bonus. So it's an awesome deal, especially when you consider that it's totally risk-free with that guarantee. So about an hour ago, when you came on the seminar, you might have been thinking, I'm at a loss of how to stop these digestive symptoms that are wrecking my life. And basically, recovery from IBS is going to walk you hand in hand through this scientifically proven and effective approach that will take care of it and get you quick improvement. Or you might have looked into low FODMAP and you might have even tried it, and maybe you didn't get the results that you were looking for. But like I showed you, there's a lot of bad information out there. And to be honest, I've seen some really chintzy handouts that came from dietitians. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. This system works. People like Beryl do it. They take it from me and they apply it, and it changes their life. So this works in real life. It's not like any low FODMAP guide or book that is available on the market. So consider it, even if you tried low FODMAP before. And finally, you might be thinking, I'm so busy and I don't know if my family will eat this food. Well, I have 3 little boys that are, little boys. They're picky eaters. They eat the low FODMAP food that I make. And again, busy moms like Melissa, busy professionals, I've got it all in my practice. And they actually feel like life gets easier when they start this, because they're like, I just buy the shopping list, I make the easy recipes, I eat the food, I feel great. And, they feel like they have a new life, basically, that's full, that's free of confusion and fear around food, and that leaves them without their symptoms. So with that, I'd love you to join me. I'm going to go ahead and start this timer, and we're going to jump into a live Q&A session. And so go ahead and in that Q&A box or in the chat box, or put in the Q&A box there if you can find it, or if you can't find that, use the chat. Go ahead and type in any questions that you have for me, and as long as you join me during this live Q&A, you're going to get the fast action bonus. Even if the timer runs out, I'll stay on, as long as we need to. But basically, while you go ahead and type in your questions, I'm going to start with answering a couple of common questions that I get, so that you have time to type your questions in. And then I'll go ahead and start off with the ones you type in. But one question I get a lot is basically, I haven't been diagnosed with IBS. Can I still get improvement from this? And if you missed the beginning, or just to go over it again, about 15% of the population is going around with IBS but undiagnosed. And there are a lot of barriers to getting diagnosed. So if you have the symptoms that we've been talking about of gas, bloating, reflux, diarrhea, constipation, and abdominal pain, you're going to benefit from this protocol. And again, you've got that money back guarantee if you don't. So it's for you, even if you technically don't have a diagnosis. And in the course, I talk to you more about how to interface with your healthcare provider to further, get support from them if that's something that you want to do. Another common question that I get is, what if I have questions or if I don't get improvement? So if you join the course, you have access to me as if you were a private one-on-one client. So you can talk to me in the Facebook group, you can send me an email, and I'll support you through this and give you those tweaks that help you to actually get where you need to get. Because basically what happens is I'll get people coming in that have been doing this using a book or something, and they've missed a really critical thing and it's not working. That's why it's helpful to have a trained professional in your court as you get started. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And now I'm gonna go ahead and start answering your questions. So I've got one here, and it says, is this approach equally effective for male and female and for the variety of age groups? And I love that question. It is equally effective for male and female. So that's really great. One barrier I see, more likely for men than for women, is that it helps. You've got to have some control over the food that you're eating. So if you are not the one who primarily cooks for your household, then it's about that support that we talked about earlier in the seminar, talking with the person who is preparing meals in your household and asking if they'll support you through this. And the great thing about the course is that it comes with those really delicious plug and play meal plans. So it would be, here's these meal plans. Would you be open to helping me do this for just a few weeks to see if it works? And I've never really had a spouse or a loved one that said, no, I refuse to cook different recipes for you. But, it's just something to keep in mind, that if you're not the person who primarily cooks for your family, that's something to talk about with your support network to make it work. And then on age groups, this kind of leads into another common question I get. But yeah, for all age groups, this is effective. I've had people from basically young 20s into their 70s do this with great results. But there is sometimes a question around cost. Is it going to be expensive to do this? I don't find that it adds really any additional cost for people. In fact, a lot of people tend to save money on their food bill because they tend to cook a little bit more at home and to have less waste when they're following the meal plans versus running out for quick meals, especially during the workday, every day, going out to lunch. That can really start to, add up in terms of the financial expense. So I just have seen that be kind of a fear with younger people. If their finances are tighter, they're thinking, oh, can I afford the food? Well, actually, yeah, it's usually more affordable than the food that that you're currently buying, if that makes sense. So that was a great question. Thanks for asking. Okay, I said I'm going to answer it live. Okay, so I'm looking over in the
Erin, there's another question, and I think it's quite similar to what you've just said about cost, but the other question was, what else will I need to buy?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good question. So there's really not any additional expense on top of the course fee other than obviously you'll need to buy food, but you're buying food anyway. So you're kind of breaking even with that. Some of the recipes, it really helps to have a little food scale. And so that's about, maybe $10 or 10 pounds to get. You don't need an expensive food scale. So, so there's really not any other big expense. There's not some secret like, oh, you need to buy these 50 dietary supplements or anything like that. And another note on that is that the expense of IBS tends to be very high for people, both in the short term for things like dietary supplements and medical care, and then in the long term, if you think about the effect that it has on people's careers and on their professional life, the expenses can be very high. So I break that down more on the website for the course, but just think about that when you're considering the course of like what you can potentially save in terms of the cost of having IBS basically are very significant. Did I miss any other ones, Carolyn?
There is another one that says, how long does it take to complete the program?
Oh, great question. So basically, once you start, budget about a week to watch the first, you'll need to watch the first like 3 modules before you start the diet. And the videos aren't very long and there's not a lot of lessons in them. So if you budget a week to watch those videos at your convenience, then you can go ahead and start the diet. And then I say give it 1 to 2 weeks, give it at least 2 weeks on the first elimination phase to before you start reintroducing. So now you're at 3 weeks for that. And then the reintroduction phase, that's bringing back the different FODMAP types and figuring out what types you're sensitive to. That takes 6 weeks. So now you're at 9 weeks. So I'd say it's 3 weeks to start feeling really good. And then it's 9 weeks to get to where you've gone through broadening your diet, that part. And then beyond that, most people will just kind of drop you at that point and say they're done with you. But in the course, I include basically like what to do beyond that, how to keep improving on it, and how to keep experimenting with foods that have like multiple types of FODMAPs in them. What do you do about that? For most people, that just ends up being a big question mark. So I've included in there what to do with that. But basically 3 weeks to start feeling really good, 9 weeks to get through the traditional phases. And then beyond that, it's up to you in terms of like the work you want to do on addressing your root causes, like I talk about in module 5. And so that you can actually ultimately get off of having to even worry about FODMAPs. That would be the best thing. And that's what I love to really see people experience. So another good question. Any others, Carolyn?
Yeah, and the last question I have is, can you go over the bonus? Can you go over the included bonuses again?
Oh yeah, definitely. So if you join here today, you get the make your own smoothie template. And then what's really great is that as you go through the protocol, even working with it, normally a dietitian or working from a book or something, you don't get this kind of like plug and play process. So what I include is like, here's a form or to fill out with what your symptoms are that will actually like, that will give you like a number in terms of like your score so that you can quantify what your improvement is. And then I include templates for food diaries, recording down what you eat, and there's multiple options for that I give you. I include very complete food lists of like almost any food you can think of. Is it high or low FODMAP? If it's low FODMAP, how to include it, or if it's high FODMAP, how to include it and when. And then I tell you for each food exactly what types of FODMAPs that it has. That's a huge limitation with a lot of FODMAP resources like those infographics that I showed you. That's enough to get you like one meal figured out. But what about the rest of your life? Like you really need the complete data and the complete process in order to like not only make it successful, but to have it not be overwhelming. So I kind of feed the information out to you as you need it and tell you exactly what to do with it so that you know exactly what to do at what point and that you know what you can like ignore until later, basically, because that's an overwhelm that I've seen a lot. Is somebody will jump in like a Facebook group and somebody is like, you need to know about this and that and this and that, and they're like, is that for me right now, or is that something I should do later? It can get very confusing. So basically with that process, I feed out these resources to you as you need them. And then again, I include all those things that make real life a lot easier while you're on it. So basically like the restaurant guide and the snack guide, so that you can go out to parties and eat out at restaurants from like basically the beginning. I include basically a meal plan for work week lunches, so that you can just buy that food, make the lunch each week, each day of the week, and have it ready to go. It's things that you don't have to cook. You can just kind of like throw it together the night before and it's ready to go. And also a pantry swap out guide. So you basically can like, if there's, you'll hear something like, oh, you can't have like wheat flour on the low FODMAP diet. Well, it actually depends on what the wheat flour is in, first of all. But if you want to be totally gluten-free, you can. But second of all, that leaves the question of, okay, if you tell me, or garlic's a better example. If you tell me I can't have garlic, what can I eat instead if a recipe calls for garlic? So in that swap guide, I basically tell you, instead of this, use this. And that's a good low FODMAP substitute for it, so that you can actually cook real recipes. Even if it's not a low FODMAP recipe, you can use that swap out guide to basically know how to convert recipes over. That makes sense. Are there any others, Carolyn?
No, that's it. Thanks,
Okay,
Erin.
great. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. If you have questions, my email address is right there. You can reply to any of the emails that I've sent you throughout this. Feel free to get in touch. I thank you so much for being here, and I wish you a great rest of your day.